day in the pub, Seb and Verity were socialising with hilarity.
They knew there and then that their options were vast. They bought some equipment and made a podcast.
What do you think you are doing, you twits? It's cliched and obvious, you know.
If this doesn't work well, then we'll call it quits. But right now, just listen to our show.
It's called
Three in a bar. We'll talk to musicians about their lives so far. Three in a bar. We hope that you like it, okay? Hooray!
Hello,
Hello!
my name is Seb Philpott.
And I'm Verity Simmons, and this is Three in a Bar.
Yes, it is. And thanks so much for tuning in. We are on episode number
12. 12
12.
already. I know.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Isn't
Episode
it?
number 12. Well, that's good. And, well, we've got a great guest for you this week.
Yes, we
Who
have.
is it?
It is.
I mean, obviously, you'll know who it is because you'll have seen on the description.
But just in case you didn't read it and you've just clicked on, it is journalist and documentary maker and critic and event host and prize judge and copywriter and lecturer, Welsh woman Jude Rogers. I'm sorry, I read that from her biography and I got to Welsh and I was like, shall I keep that in? But she very much is, and she's proud of it. So yes.
Yeah, is that her own biography that she's written?
It is indeed. It is her own biography.
Wow. Well, I'm glad we read all of those out.
I know, quite. She's so interesting.
Multifaceted.
Yeah. And like, she's just interviewed basically everyone, hasn't she? Under the sun.
She's interviewed more people than us.
Yes, she has. Yes, she has. In fact, do you know what? When we invited her on as a guest, I remember thinking, oh, this is brilliant, fantastic, what could possibly go wrong? And then thinking about what the repercussions of this were. She's very experienced at journalistic things, and perhaps we're not so much.
Oh, it's all right. But I think a lot of this interview was us just asking her how to do it.
Yeah.
But she was very nice and accommodating.
Yes, she was.
And but yeah, she's really interviewed, I mean, seemingly everyone.
Yeah.
Some absolute, legends in the music industry.
Yeah. Paul McCartney, Michael
Paul
Stipe.
McCartney. Yeah.
So many. Yeah.
And yes, so she talks about interviewing those people that have hung up on her.
Yeah.
On the phone, and people that she's had bad interviews with, and it's sort of tarnished her relationship with their music.
Yeah.
Have you ever had any people that you've met that you've said something that's sort of sent you into a bit of a shame well, and then you can't listen to their music anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I met Bjork a few years ago, and that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, come on, let's face it.
Have we talked about that on here?
I don't think we did. I think I knit because it was with Kelly, last week's guest, Kelly Pratt.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It was at a Father John Misty gig. And I remember him saying, oh, come on, we'll just go and say hello to a few of us there. And, I'd had a couple of wines. I just don't think that she's like necessarily the easiest person to approach in the best of circumstances. Certainly not when you've had a couple of wines.
No.
Definitely woke
Did
up
she
the
say
next day.
anything to you? Did she know what was going on when she met you?
She looked bemused and terrified in equal measures. I think she was looking around to check she had her guards there. How about you? Have you met anyone and it's ruined it for you?
I was trying to think there. I know I brought it up. I'm sure there are people that I've met. I just thought of one, but I can't talk about it. I can't talk about it.
Can you mime it to me?
Because I don't come off well.
Oh, no.
I'm trying to think.
You don't come off well in it, did you say?
A band that I've played with that I can't talk about it.
Oh. Oh, no, I really want to know now.
But I think it's fine, but it's just I did some stuff with the band, and I now, whenever I hear that band, I have an immediate sort of shame, regret thing.
No.
But I'll tell you it in person.
Okay, great.
Or maybe I'll talk about it.
Can I guess?
on
Is
here one
it
day.
Steps? Was it Steps?
Oh, yeah, you got it straight away.
I knew it.
Yeah. I just so embarrassed thinking back to those guys.
No. Oh, no. It's awful, isn't it? But she was great. And I found that very heartening, her telling us about, perhaps some less than perfect experiences as well. And I've definitely noted down a lot of her tips. Yeah.
Yeah. What the main tips? Well, let's not spoil it for the listeners, shall we?
No,
There's loads of great things in this chat. Well, here we go. This is the conversation we had with Jude Rogers.
What's good about Zoom is you can have a little nose around their house and see that kind of stuff. But so that's been interesting. I did, but it's also made me realise how, it's made me appreciate how amazing technology is in other ways. Obviously, I moved from living in the middle of London, or the middle of East London, busy part of London, to here, and my career could carry on. In this time, everybody else has got used to that. And I've also been doing interviews with people internationally more, which is interesting. I did a piece the other week for The Guardian about this brilliant Radio 3 documentary about electronic music in India. And I interviewed one of the people who'd made some of this music who was in Puerto Rico. And it was just, fire up Zoom. There we are. A guy in Puerto Rico who's telling me about the lockdown situation out there. And I thought, this is amazing,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have used that video conferencing technology before, probably a phone call. But I think the fact that people want to see each other more now, that's making interviewing quite interesting as well.
We were wondering about when you're interviewing somebody in particular, if you're doing an article on one specific artist, do you usually spend a protracted amount of time with them? Or is it often a one-off? And which do you prefer?
Oh, that depends on how famous they are generally. The worst situation is when you're in a room with 2 or 3 other people, you all have 20 minutes and you have to throw questions at somebody. That's only happened to me a couple of times and a long time ago. Actually, that wasn't with musicians as well. That was with actors who have that's a whole new world. But musicians, I like to try and spend time with people. And if it's going to be a big feature, you need a bit of time with them. And their publicists usually want you to be with them in a place for colour, as we say. That's what I really enjoy. But sometimes having the pressure of a short window it terrifies me still. But it really focuses your preparation and what questions you're going to ask and all that kind of stuff. And I've had a couple of 20-minute interviews with pretty famous people. Paul McCartney on the phone, 20 minutes.
Oh, my God.
Wow. Which was nuts.
Oh, my God.
And, trying to get something new out of Paul McCartney, who's done, trillions of interviews. And I had 20 minutes with Michael Stipe, the singer of R.E.M.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
Who was my teenage idol. So I was both shaking, trying to be professional while still being this 15-year-old girl with a poster of him on my school folder. But that was quite good because I knew his work so well. I was prepared. But, when Paul McCartney's on the phone, you're like, just wanted to go, it's Paul McCartney on the phone.
Yeah, and was he easy to interview? How was he?
Oh, God. Not really. He was perfectly nice. But, some of the questions I asked, he just wasn't answering those questions. He was answering questions that other people had asked him. He did say, I did manage to get him to say something that I hadn't read before, which I was quite excited about. I'd read somewhere that he had been really interested in the BBC's radiophonic workshop in the 60s. And there'd been rumours for years that he might have done some stuff with them or met some of them. And he told me that he'd met Delia Derbyshire, who famously set the Doctor Who theme to electronics, first of all, to tape, the tape cutting. And he'd taken her to his shed in his garden, or she'd taken him to the shed in her garden and shown him some equipment or something. And and the fact that the song Yesterday, he'd originally conceived it as an electronic piece of music, which is insane.
Oh, wow.
So I was there doing that interview and I wanted to go, yes.
Yeah. I've gotcha.
But that was really, that was a tough one. But
Is Is that kind of the aim sometimes when you're interviewing someone like that, to always try and get something unique out of them that no one else has before? Is that always like the golden thing you aim for as a journalist?
I do, yeah, because I think, what is the point of you as a journalist doing a piece about somebody? There's so many features out there these days which are just the same stuff. And, you and I have all read the same features about the same people. What we find that's unexpected or different about this particular person that will make you smile, that would surprise you. That's the rule one of feature writing and journalism to me, is like, get something new and interesting. But when it's somebody really well known, that can be really hard. So you just think, okay, let's think about presenting them in a different way, or maybe think of them as a human being rather than a pop star. I remember the Paul McCartney piece. I remember finding out how his mum and dad met in an air raid shelter randomly in the early 40s. I thought, if they hadn't met that night, would the Beatles have not have existed? I interviewed Kylie Minogue, and the thing that really kind of excited me, again, as somebody who was a big fan as a young child, or kind of a tween, that kind of age, was that she had relatives in Wales. And that's the first thing I asked her. I said, I know this is a bit random to start the interview, but I'm Welsh, and I know you've got, your mum is Welsh. And she said, yeah, my grandma still lives in the valleys. And then Kylie was trying to say various things in Welsh to me. And I thought that's interesting and different. But also, if you bring in that little funny detail, it can open people up and make them more comfortable or whatever. And you can maybe press them a bit more. I'm not the kind of interviewer who thinks, right, let's find a pull quote, the kind of that sticks out from the page that's going to make them look bad or could be misinterpreted by the press. I'm always quite aware of that. Find something that's charming or heartwarming or uplifting, or it can be shocking and surprising, but the stuff that's a little bit more difficult, you've just got to be very careful with, I think, because these are people after all.
Do you find that over the years, have you found that artists have become more guarded, or are they happier to speak about things? How's it changed since you started in journalism?
Well, so I started in 2003, which was an interesting time to start because the internet hadn't really had the effect on music journalism as it has. Blogs were a relatively new thing back then. It was before social media. Those glorious days. But it's interesting. The people who sign to major labels get a lot of media training, and some people get a lot more conscious of saying things that could be misinterpreted. I've done a lot of interviews with musicians for women's magazines, and those are the interviews that are toughest because you can tell the people being interviewed are thinking, right, these things get pounced upon by the tabloids and a line will be pulled out and thrown on. That's quite interesting. But then again, so you've definitely got that channel of it. But also quite early on when I was first writing features, maybe 2005, 2006, suddenly you had artists like Amy Winehouse coming along, Lily Allen, who were, and then Adele shortly after, people who didn't really adhere to that kind of school of media training at all. And there's a lot more of those artists have come out. A lot of women have now speak in a different way. Although, women, again, of course, are careful about what they say in some ways as well.
Yeah.
But I interviewed the musician Nadine Shah recently. Now, she's a great example of somebody who does not give two hoots and will say anything. But also, I said to her, I find your music is quite, gothic and atmospheric, and there's a lot of mystique about it, but you're not like that at all. And she said, and sometimes I wish I did have a bit more mystique about me because it could protect me a little bit. But I think people form bonds with artists who have personalities that are more like people you might get on with, go to the pub with, I think that's Adele's success, actually.
Yeah, I bet it makes you want to write a warmer article about them as well, because if they're being standoffish, surely you just think, fuck you.
Yeah, I've had a few of those,
Oh, do go on.
I did have a rant about this. I recently, Alex Turner from the Arctic Monkeys was very rude to me. On the phone interview, and I haven't been able to listen to them the same since, which is weird. If I've had a bad experience doing an interview with somebody, I just sort of go off them, which is a bit silly. I had somebody hang up on me the other week. But that wasn't my fault, to be fair, and it was not his publicist's fault.
Right.
It was Brandon Flowers from The Killers. He had been
Oh.
He had been wrongly. To be fair, he wasn't mean. He'd been wrongly briefed as to what the piece should be, and he realised quite quickly that what I wanted and what he had prepared were different, and he was just quite embarrassed. And halfway through, he's like, "I can't do this. I'm going." And I'm like, "No, it'll be fine. Come back and my editor in the end said, "Oh, don't worry, just leave it." And so that was, but yeah, that's never happened to me before. Oh. Yeah, I did a piece for The Observer in which I interviewed. Well, I got together loads of musicians, and it was quite hard to organise, but getting people to make playlists for listeners about different moods that we're feeling in lockdown. So, do we need songs that make us feel? Do we have songs we play because we want to feel more optimistic? Do we want songs that are going to make us dance? Songs that we want to listen to when we're feeling really cheesed off and really want to, vent or whatever. And yeah, he came in he was asked very early on, but said yes quite late in the day. And we said, we've done all these, but we need one of these too. And his managers, I don't think, had really followed it. So he just done something completely different. So yeah, he didn't want to look embarrassed in the middle of the whole thing. But it was one of those things. But still, I was like, I'm in my office now, which is in my house, and it was just before tea time, and I remember going down to my husband and son for tea, and I was like, well, Brandon Flowers just hung up on me, so there we are, normal day. fish fingers and chips,
Yeah, standard day life.
Do you ever have artists respond to any of your reviews? Have they ever given you any feedback, tell you what they think about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, for a year, I had a long period of not doing reviews, actually. I used to do them quite regularly for The Guardian and for Word magazine, which is where I started. Magazine's now long gone, sadly. But it was about 5 years when I stopped, and then I was asked to be the Guardian's folk correspondent because I'm so cool. No, folk music is really cool. I started reviewing then, and then in the last year or so, I've started doing reviews for Mojo, which I haven't done for years. And it's weird because, I don't know, the older I get, the more I think about the musicians and the amount of time and work they've put into making this record. My husband has been in a couple of bands, and I've seen reviews that his bands have got, and where they're completely missing the point about, what instruments were used or what the songs are about. And it was funny seeing that from the other angle, thinking, oh, okay, that's how it goes. That's how it feels when you read these reviews. To answer your question, I've had a couple of, there's a couple of folk albums I gave real stinkers of reviews to. And I don't do that very often. I won't do, the 1-star stitch-ups. I won't do that. But I just thought these records weren't very good. Yeah. And I had somebody hounding me on Twitter about this who turned out to be the artist's brother.
Oh, no.
But I did also had emails from a couple of other people in the folk world who said, oh, I agree with you. I'm so glad somebody's finally said.
Yeah.
But, it is a matter of opinion as well. I'm kind of at pains to say that, But then if you're a critic and you think something is genuinely missing the mark, or...
Yes.
You've got to do it. It is difficult. Yeah. It is difficult.
I mean, it's often said that, what critics write is not for the artist to read, because it can affect the artist. And I know comedians often say that kind of thing. Like if you're in Edinburgh and you read a review of yourself, it can just completely wreck your whole month. Oh, and then, the next night you're double thinking everything, and it must be awful, especially if you're on your own doing a stand-up or something. You're just that one person. But I don't know. I think it's obviously it's great to have music criticism. Yeah. And it's very important for audiences as well, and to help artists build an audience as well. But it's just, it's interesting that I think the whether an artist should pay attention to what a critic says or just completely ignore it. But artists are such fragile people, really, deep down.
Yeah, that's the thing.
They're going to do it.
Yeah.
I think post-social media as well, you can just get in touch with critics, or you can see the artists there, and it makes you think a lot more about it, really. I have a rule now that I just... I try and adhere to it as much as possible. I will not review books or music by people I know. You know, I mentioned Nadine Shah. I've recently reviewed her latest album, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
But I sort of know her because we're not friends. We could have sort of I've followed her stuff over the years and bumped into her places, and she's really nice.
I thought she was lovely. She carried my cello case for me at the Colston Hall. What a lovely,
so
lovely.
nice.
That's what you
picked
want.
it up. I had too many things in my hands. Picked up my case. That was enough to sell her to me massively.
But yeah, if that album had not been fantastic, I would have, said that. I wouldn't say this album is rubbish, but there's artists I've really loved and championed in the past that they've done a new record and I've thought it's not as good. Like there's an amazing Danish musician, a singer-songwriter called Agnes Obel, who I love. I don't know, last record, it was quite good, but it wasn't as good as her others, I didn't think. And I was a big supporter of the band The XX very early on. I did their first interview for The Guardian, and I felt like their auntie or something. I loved them so much. And I really wanted them to do well. I went to New York with them and all the Enemy, all this stuff. It was amazing.
Oh, wow.
And then their second album came out, and I was just like, don't think it's as good. And I did this review in Q, and I found feeling really awful. And, I haven't seen them since, but at the time, everyone was saying this is amazing, 5-star album. But actually, if you look at what people say about them now, people think of that second album as a bit of a dip, and then third album being a bit better. You've got to be honest about these things, otherwise, what's the point?
I'm interested in how do you review an album? Do you listen to it a certain number of times? Do you sit and just focus on it solely, or do you put it on while you're driving or doing the washing up, or do you have a certain process you do for each album, or is it always a bit different? That's
a really good question, and because it's really important. Sometimes I'm asked, I haven't been asked recently, but I have been asked in the past, can you review this for tomorrow morning? And I think, no, how can you review an album that quickly? No. Sometimes if an album's just been released and a newspaper says, we need a first listen review. Yeah. That's fine. And I love when, all those surprise drops of albums come. Like, I remember when Beyonce's album probably about 10 years ago now dropped, and Alexis Petridis of The Guardian had to fire something out. But he's amazing anyway. And he's really funny and really honest. And what I do generally, say with Mojo, I always get the records so old-fashioned, about a week or 10 days before, on a SoundCloud stream usually these days. What I'll try and do is put it on the kitchen when I'm cooking, or try to have it on the background a bit. When I was driving more, obviously not doing that much at the moment, especially living in lockdown Wales. I drive to the dairy and back. That's what I do. But I like listening to it in the car. I love listening to music in the car. I'm a big car music fan.
Yeah. Exactly.
But having just it in the background and around, I also always ask the publicists for the artists if they've got lyrics or if they've got any liner notes, send them along, because I know with Mojo in particular that their readers are music nerds. They want to know the little details. So there might be something that's interesting there. I love being able to pick up the lyrics and, rather than just guess the lyrics and I'm listening to them and misquote somebody dreadfully and miss the point of the song. But I do like doing that, you just have it on in the background, because when you're just listening to a stream like this on a computer, it's not the same. I was listening to a record a couple of weeks ago and I thought, this is great. And then I just had it in the background cooking tea and I was thinking, it's not grabbing me as, I think you've got to try and experience it as a listener would experience, an ordinary listener would experience, and not somebody who's writing about it.
Yeah. They're very different things, aren't they? I've heard it called active listening, where you're just sat there listening and you're just doing that, and it's really hard to maintain your focus on that. I don't know why it is with music, and music, it does tend to get listened to in the background when you're doing other things, and then that's why albums can be heard hundreds of times compared to films. You only really watch a film 1, 2, 3 times, even your favourite film sometimes. Yeah. But music you listen to hundreds of times.
Exactly.
It's weird that. And I guess that's because the visuals change all the time. And
it's
I don't
funny.
know. And it's interesting that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's funny, and it's funny when you're reviewing an album. I quite often get 3 or 4 albums a month for Mojo. Yeah. And some of them you probably won't listen to it again.
Yeah.
But you also got to think about, it depends on who you're reviewing it for. I'm reviewing it for a Mojo reader, and Jenny Bully, who's the reviews editor there, who's great. She says, she wants each person to be reviewing to be a fan anyway. So she said, will you review this? And I'm like, no, I think they're shit or whatever. So I'll, but so you've got to be a fan, and you want the readers to be looking at that review because they think they're interesting, and how does this compare to other records in their careers, or how does this stack up, or is this a new artist that's interesting because of this genre or whatever. But I've read back reviews I've written 10 years ago saying this album's amazing, and I thought, I think I listened to that 4 times afterwards. Sometimes you've got to you've got to think of it a bit more long term, really.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, Oasis's third record, Be Here Now, got 5-star reviews, and nobody thinks much of it anymore because people get caught up in the moment. That is something, the older I get, and more experienced I get, I really try and ward against. Think about, this is slightly different, but I reviewed one of my most exciting live gig reviews. I love doing live gig reviews. I reviewed the first night of the Kate Bush residency in the Hammersmith Apollo in 2014.
Cool. Yeah.
It was... Yeah. I had a 4-month-old baby at the time. It was the first time I'd gone out, and I was, so for all kinds of reasons, I was a mess. But I remember kind of, I had gin and tonic in a pub by myself. I was going, what's going on? This is really weird. And I remember sitting in the row in there, and all the critics are there, and loads of people I've known through the years. Pete Fides was there, Will Hodgkinson from The Times, Caitlin Moran was there, all these people. And I was looking down this row, and thinking, I bet everybody's going to give this a 5-star review before it's even started, because everybody has such goodwill to want her to be amazing.
Yeah.
And I reviewed it for Pitchfork in the US. It's the only thing I've ever written for Pitchfork. They got in touch with me because I'd written a piece a few years previously. And I remember there were some things that I didn't think really worked. Her voice wasn't as great as it could have been. But, also thinking, she's older, so her voice has changed and all this stuff. But I wrote a review that wasn't like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And I got such a slagging for it. I saw her 3 weeks later in the same residency, having actually managed to buy a ticket, the same morning that everybody else had fired up their laptops and went onto the website to try and managed to get some tickets. And 3 weeks onwards, it had really kind of come into its own, and it was much better. But I thought that was interesting. When people reviews get quite homogenized sometimes. People think, what do people expect? What expecting this gig to be, rather than what is it actually like?
Yeah, I've noticed that with theatre reviews often, where you start seeing them come out. Of a couple of shows that I did, where you see the first. It's like some of them are waiting to gauge what's going on with some of the other ones. Would that be correct in saying that? Like, it seems like the first 3 come out and they're iffy, so then everyone goes down that route, or like one comes out and then suddenly everyone says it's really great.
I think people do. I try not to read stuff.
Yeah.
But sometimes I read. I do get nervous that I've got it wrong, which is a weird thing.
Yeah, well, we'd all feel that. I completely understand. It must be so hard to trust things, especially if it's an extreme reaction to something.
Yeah, but then it's I was still saying that Kate Bush gig was really great, but not amazing. And I reviewed an album recently for Mojo by the band The 1975, and I thought, was this really ambitious? There's 22 tracks. But it's sort of all over the place. And some bits work really well, but it's sort of a bit of a mess. And I said that in the review, and I thought, I bet everybody else is going to say this is amazing. But actually the other reviews said the same thing, because I had to write it 2 months before it came out. And I quite like reviewing for Mojo, actually, because you can't accidentally see a review by somebody else.
Yeah.
But then you learn to sort of trust your instincts and try not to care as much if people disagree.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah.
You were on the Mercury Prize panel, weren't you? In 20, was it 2007? Is that right?
I was there for 6 years from 2007 onwards.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
My God, that is a lot of listening. So it's over 200 albums you listen to a go, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right?
It's crazy. I would, at the time, I remember the first year I did it, and I thought, how am I going to do this? To be honest, I was a reviews editor when I did it for the first year, and so a lot of the albums I'd come across already.
Oh, okay.
And I have written quite extensively about the Mercury, and I don't think every judge listens to everything. And also, if you hear the first track of a record and you hate it, you're not going to give it one of your 12, shortlisted places, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
But then again, it's hard because if you're somebody who's maybe not into, say, folk music, you might listen to a bit of the first track and go, oh, no, not for me. My tastes are really eclectic. I'm not saying, because I'm so cool, but, there's some people who are there like, they're there as somebody who works for Radio 1, or there was somebody who's there who works for this place, and they might have their own view on what this should be about. I just like, it's a crazy thing having that many albums, to be honest. I think it's I don't think it's a brilliant system, although it's changed in recent years. It has changed in recent years, and I think the last couple of years have been amazing, the Mercurys. I think when we did it, it was fun, and we had some really fun years. I did nearly the first year, and the Claxons one, not Amy Winehouse's Back to Black.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, because you were just saying about albums that last over time. Like Back to Black is a classic, isn't it? Claxons.
Yeah, that's an example of everyone getting whipped up into some sort of, frenzy that's going on at the time. The Claxons did not last, did they? Really?
What was it called? New Rave? I can't even remember. But that wasn't my choice. I could have had quite a vociferous argument with a couple of the panel. I remember one of them was the lovely Lauren Laverne, who could have and we just, I don't know who it was about the Claxons, but I remember thinking, I don't know, you were Lauren Laverne. This is not right. We're supposed to be, pals. Because she's amazing. And this is before she was like a big DJ, so she was still on XFM, I think, and I still thought of her as this 90s indie person from Kinnicky, the band I love.
Yeah.
But that I was not happy about that. But the next year was Elbow, and that was an amazing year, actually, because Elbow were not really, they were not, I think, I would say this, of course, I think Elbow were totally made by the Mercury. They brought people, they were in that position, and they were pushed to a more mainstream audience, and Guy Garvey owes me lots of money, basically, because but that was a lovely year. That was it, and it really felt like that was the right decision, and that record was such a beautiful record. But we did, Elbow, who else? Speech to Bell 1 year later. I still think that's an amazing record. Nobody else does. 2010 was the XX. 2011 was PJ Harvey. 2012 was Alt J, who I'm not a fan of either. And I was out after that because I think I swore too much in the meetings.
Gave them a pasting.
It really struck me, though, as that period went along. And again, I've written angrily about this, how classical music, folk music, stuff that... Basically the stuff that's played on Radio 3 and the kind of like Lake Junction-y type shows just gets... People just don't send stuff in because that stuff doesn't get into the shortlist, and that stuff sort of gets weeded out. And there's been some amazing judges on the panel. There's been some great jazz people. But the last time a folk record was nominated was 2012, and that's the last year I was in. And I think that's linked, which is there's this idea that the Mercury should represent what's going on in Britain right now, and I think a lot of people just think folk is Britain long gone, which is a very reductive way of looking at folk music. I have learned some amazing things, through. I'm one of these weird people that I'm the Guardian's folk writer, but I loved grime really early on. I reviewed Wiley's first album, I remember, in 2003, and I was really happy when Dave won last year. So it's not that I'm resistant, but I know that there are people who think, we should be following the latest new thing. And it's not just about grime or kind of certain kinds of, what's branded horribly as urban music, not at all. It's kind of like, it's because it is old and traditional, and it's not, modern or using, the latest electronics or whatever. I don't know. It's a weird one. Yeah. It's a weird one.
Yeah.
But what's the sort of remit of the Mercury Prize? What's the idea? Are they meant to be giving it to the best music of any kind coming out that year, or is it meant to be? So it's not like popular music in any way.
It's like 12 albums that represent that year, really, from all the things that have been sent in, and lots of stuff.
The classical thing could be in there, really, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Not...
The last couple of years I did it, I don't think there were any classical things actually sent in for the process. That's what really shocked me. Yeah. And,
do they just assume that they won't get anywhere? Do you think, is there just a feeling they're not going to? Yeah. What a shame.
I think so. I did a piece for The Guardian 2 years ago, maybe. And and I interviewed people who'd been nominated in the early days, because there were lots of classical nominations in the early days, and also labels. And I can't remember who it was now, but somebody said, classical labels just don't send stuff in anymore. But I interviewed Gavin Bryars, which was really exciting. And he was saying it was a really important thing for him because it put his music, I think it was a recording of Jesus' Blood Never Failed Me Yet, and it put his music into a different, into different audience. To be fair, I really think the last couple of years, the Mercury has really upped its game, and there've been some amazing performances. They've also had, the people have gotten to the shortlist, like the band Idols, who were like in your face, and and
so went to see them, lost his glasses there.
I saw them at Ali Pali last year, and I was just standing with my friend, and then the band started, and just. I thought it was at a safe distance. I was like, this would be nice here. I could just stand. And then just suddenly, everyone behind me, I fell over, got up, my glasses were gone. Like, they're in a million pieces already.
Oh my gosh.
It's fantastic though. I loved it.
But seeing the ceremony on TV last year, I was so excited for every single act. Little Sims was amazing. And it felt like, something has changed here. Something has been whipped up. And also, I think making the panel a little bit broader, more diverse, kind of in terms of age, it was very white when I did it. It was very led by radio when I did it. And it was also radio commissioners thinking of maybe their own particular things. But I thought it was, there was no folk there, which was a shame. But kind of like there was 12 really exciting albums. I didn't love them all, but I thought this really feels vital. It feels important.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess a lot of those artists are talking about in their lyrical content today's issues. So in a very kind of often angry way or celebrating people. So it's very you can connect to it on a very human level, a lot of this music. So maybe it does feel a lot more urgent, to talk about those sort of issues.
Yeah, I think it's just seemed slow tie with Boris's head. It was like, what's going on? This doesn't happen to Mercury's. But it felt for years that the Mercury's was just a bit like the Brits, and they'd sort of become the same thing. And it's like, well, that's... But what's interesting now is I think the Brits is becoming more like the Mercury's is becoming a little bit more challenging, Music's quite exciting at the moment, I think, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And so you're now reviewing folk music, and did you get into folk? Were you always interested, or is it something latterly you've come to?
It's funny. I guess I had it in the background when I was growing up, but I really got into it. And that wasn't in any serious sense. My mum and dad went like down the folk club. My mum liked Ralph McTell. I had a lot of kind of acoustic, guitar stuff, vaguely. But I'm from a South Walian Baptist chapel family where they, it was hymns and choirs. That's the kind of background I'm from. And I was just in the corner like listening to Pet Shop Boys and, the Bangles and all this kind of stuff. It was the sort of early 2000s, like folk, like revival or the kind of psychedelic folk stuff that started to happen. There were a lot of reissues of like rare old folk rock records and things like the Philpott Convention things being reissued, and people like Vashti Bunyan were coming back. And it was the early days, the Green Man Festival, actually, which really celebrated... the early days of it especially was about psychedelic stuff, the psychedelic side of folk, and I loved that. And I started getting into, I think I heard Shirley Collins and Davy Graham's Folk Roots, New Roots, and I decided to listen to all this stuff. And they sort of cut across as like singer-songwriter music a bit at the time as well, so that's where I kind of came in. And then I started interviewing folk musicians and getting more interested in traditional songs, and I've always been somebody who's more interested in the kind of more experimental ends of that stuff, or stuff that's a bit more raw, or I don't know, interesting. And I'm not one for like for folk being like a comfort blanket and being really sweet and gentle. I like the stuff that's like, there was somebody murdered. And this is what happened. But I interviewed Shirley Collins quite early on in that love of it all, really, 2008, and I've interviewed her quite a lot of times now with friends. It's really weird. And I have reviewed her album, which I felt compromised by. I said, please, could you review this album? I was like, oh, yeah, okay. That was a hard one. But she's amazing. And and she really made me realise how I had this idea the folk was safe and comfortable and lovely, and then you start getting into the songs, and also I grew up singing as well, you know, with the Welsh family stuff, and like singing hymns and doing the alto parts, and I'm a violinist who much preferred fiddling to not a violinist in any great sense, you know. Kind of I did my grades, and I was in school orchestras and stuff, and sort of gave up when I went to university. But it was like, I don't like, you know, Mozart's too hard. Give me some Jewish wedding music and I'm away. You know, that's the kind of stuff I love. So and I started seeing those links there, and I started singing in the community choir in Cecil Sharp House, the headquarters of the English Folk and Dance Song Society, which was amazing. Singing old English folk songs, Welsh songs, Scottish songs, Georgian and lots of Eastern European songs. Oh God, I loved it. And I sort of just pursued that, really. Kind of like pitched more, my head says, oh, we should review this or review that. And when it came to The Guardian, had a bit of a change with its reviews about 3 years ago, and they decided they were going to do columns rather than, maybe it's less than that, 2 years ago or so. And so I was asked, do you want to do the folk column? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And so I do one a month, which feels not enough in some respects, but it's like one album and 3 other things. And I always try and get stuff that's a little bit more, you know, esoteric, and then not just for the sake of it, but try and get stuff that feels very exciting or new. And there's loads of great stuff out there at the moment. I think there are some labels paying attention to folk music who some people find quite surprising, like Rough Trade have put out a lot of interesting folk stuff, and that is mainly because Jeff Travis, who runs Rough Trade, is a huge folk fan and always has been. You know, I've saw him a couple of times at the Cambridge Folk Festival, and I was like, what are you doing here? You know, aren't you supposed to be on tour with the Libertines or something? And he was there to see Richard Thompson, you know, and so there's that, and there's also this little label River Lee that they've set up a subsidiary, just had some amazing artists like Lisa O'Neill, who I think is just amazing. I just think that a lot of the bands they've got, so there's a real intensity to some of the music coming out. I think that's connecting with people as well, like Lankum, the Irish band. Oh my God, some of the best gigs I've seen in recent years. Just they're so fantastic. And the kind of stuff that, it's not easy music, but it's the kind of stuff that is, you know, it's all enveloping and it's intense. I took my husband to see Lankum at a festival. I went to see a live gig in Cardigan in West Wales. There's this festival called Other Voices, and they had a Welsh version of it in Cardigan last year. And he had heard bits of them but never loved them, but seeing them live, he's like, oh my God, they're incredible. The harmonies and the treatments of these old songs, they're so beautiful. And like Lankum, to me, they sound a bit like, this is actually something I'm quite proud of. I think they sound to me a bit like Portishead, the most kind of like intense. And I interviewed Jeff Barrow and Adrian Utley from Portishead last year, and I've met Adrian Utley a few times because he does stuff with the Power Orchestra, and I knew him a bit. But I was a bit scared of meeting Jeff Barrow from Portishead because he's quite intense, and he is grumpy on Twitter, and he says that he is. But I said to him, I kept thinking that this new Lankum record I'd only just heard, I said it really reminded me of Portishead's Third, which I think is one of the best records. And I mentioned it to them, and mentioned to Jeff, and Jeff's been working with Verity, the singer, and just posting on Twitter going, I found this band recently, I think they're amazing. I'm like, oi Jeff, it was me. I told you. But no, it's fun. But like, I've introduced Jeff Barrow to this amazing band, and he hadn't heard of them before. And I'm like, oh yeah. But the bands that are exciting me are the bands I think they connect outside folk, you know, as well. Yeah. Not just because they're trying to escape. They're not trying to escape folk music. They're trying to do something really vital and important with it. And I think there's a kind of urgency to it at the moment. You know, some of them sing political songs as well, which I think is part of the climate we're in. Yeah. But it's really exciting time. I think it's really exciting in America as well. I just reviewed this artist I only came across because I got an email from his publicist, a guy called Jake Blount, I think is how you pronounce his surname, who's an amazing, you must check him out. He's an amazing, he's from Virginia, lives in Rhode Island, plays the banjo amazingly, plays the fiddle amazingly, best voice, And he could have done this debut album that's basically trying to unpick and unravel the kind of indigenous and Black American roots of folk music. A bit like Rhiannon Giddens, but in a very different way. I don't know if you know her; she's amazing as well. But so much folk music is not. It's not. Yeah, a lot of folk music is folk music is seen as white, and it's not. It's kind of every culture, every part of the world. These instruments are every part of the world, and I think people very easily just. And that's what I'm trying to do with the column as well, trying to show that this is not the thing you think it is. But his record is amazing, and he made me think of artists like Gillian Welch, and the fact that it felt like this really urgent, instant record. And I really hope that's a really, really good recent one.
Yeah, because that's it. Like folk music, that's it's encompassing an awful lot, actually. I don't know how you're able to narrow it down to pick one, like a couple of albums every month, because I mean, where do you start? So many countries with folk music, everywhere.
To be honest, it's, I get sent stuff, but I always look on Bandcamp as well, because lots of people release stuff independently. And I try and, a couple of months ago, there's this woman, I'm going to forget her name. Yeah, I've forgotten her name. This woman in her 60s who'd been in various bands and did this album that was inspired by Ridley Walker, the Russell Hoban novel. It was fantastic. And I just found it on Bandcamp, and I put it in my also out this month. And she did not expect that at all, because she hadn't. And she'd got I've had 20 orders today. She's really excited. But I'm very lucky to have a great editor at The Guardian, Laura Snapes, who just always says, to the specialist columnists, we want you to broaden the definitions of what people think these things are, so people are surprised and are maybe brought in. I do worry that sometimes could let down people who are more traditional, but I always, if there's a really good record that feels like it's a very safe folk record but is interesting, I'll still put it in. The also out column, but it also gives me scope to do. I had an album sent to me of Bulgarian folk stuff late last year, and it was so brilliant. And I was thinking, this could very easily go in the global column, but they are conversations. They make sure that these things are covered so nobody loses out. They're quite good at that, actually.
Folk's such a big term, isn't it? It's sort of, I mean, how do you define it when you think about what folk is? How do you discern what's one thing's folk and not, something else? I
put it as, I think of it more as traditional music. So it's trying to take older songs. Oh, that's difficult in itself, isn't it? And trying to do something new with it. Basically, I don't, folk is quite often used to mean singer-songwriter, isn't it, really? Or something that sounds a bit polite.
Yeah, I guess so.
But I have reviewed people who might have had a past doing traditional music but are known to a traditional music audience, like... trying to think of an example. There's a singer called Lavinia Blackwall who used to be in Trembling Bells, and she's done lots of traditional stuff in the past, but her new record's really not folk. It could be anywhere, but I think I'm not sure where she'd fit in to The Guardian otherwise, and I want to put this in because I think people would be interested in it. So I think, it's got a connection to the ancient music of a place, really.
I guess folk would always have been passed down generations, isn't it? Like, it's the songs that your parents and your grandparents would have sung, and before, people wouldn't have written things down, and it would have just been, you'd hear it in the pubs and
exactly
in your communities. And
it is weird though. I've been writing a piece today about the song Dirty Old Town, which everybody knows. Most famously by the Pogues or the Dubliners, both by Ewan McCall. Now, he wrote that for a play in 1949, and I was thinking, it's funny how that's thought of as a folk song in some respects, whereas the very early rock and roll songs are like 5 years younger than that, and they're not thought of as traditional. So,
no.
I know it's kind of, he just wrote that for a play. He wrote that for a work of fiction. It's interesting.
As reviewing albums so extensively, ruined. Is it like a busman's holiday now when you come to sit down and listen to music?
Do you know what? You're closer to the truth than you think. So I was a reviews editor a reviews assistant and then a reviews editor for 4 years altogether. And, you turn up in the office and there'd be 2 sacks every day of CDs. And it really did. Because you were thinking, I can't listen to all this and make a judgment. I'm going to miss some stuff out. I have always been the kind of music listener, like I say popular music listener, that I will look at covers, I look at the artwork and go, oh, that looks cool, I'll put that on. Because I think that is an important part of the package. And obviously that's harder with SoundCloud links these days.
Yeah.
But it is funny kind of reviewing again more regularly. I don't do loads of it. If I did loads of it, I think I'd get jaded.
Yeah.
But I try and, there's loads of music styles of music I like that I don't review actually. I love loads of electronic music and like sort of more ambient stuff and your traditional weird late junction experimental stuff, which I don't review as much. I'd like to in some ways, but then I think I was thinking this the other day, should I pitch more of that? I thought, no, I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah, exactly. Keep it special.
Yeah. No, but you do. I know people who, I've got a friend who was a music journalist when I was starting out and went off and left that to do other kind of journalism, and she would be, I thought, you'll still be sent free CDs. She said, I don't want to actually, because I want to kind of just like try and find music for myself again.
Yeah.
Because you will become friends with publicists and they'll send you stuff and you'll feel slightly beholden and you're always fighting all those feelings. So yeah, I'm quite happy with the amount I'm doing at the moment, which is a folk column every month, 3 or 4 things for Mojo. Occasionally I'll do a lead album for them, but if I'm offered a lead album for them, I want it to be, I'll say if I've hit, the editor's good, she'll say, listen to it a couple of times, and if you don't think it's for you, tell me. And I do actually. I know some journalists will just say, no, I'll do it anyway because I need the job or whatever, which is fair enough. Yeah. But I did a big lead on Laura Marling recent one the other month, which is really fantastic record. So I was quite pleased to get my teeth into that. Yeah. It's so good.
I started listening to some of that the other day. It's great, isn't it?
It's beautiful, yeah. And the lyrics are great. She's really talented.
Do you ever think, do they ever start talking people you're interviewing and you think, I'm not convinced that you're telling me the truth here, that they're just spouting lines?
Oh, I must have. Oh, God, yeah, some of the... Oh, actually, yeah, I had somebody who was completely telling me lies. This is Girls Aloud, R.I.P.
Yeah.
Nadine from Girls Aloud. She had her first solo record out. This is about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was obvious a lot of what she's telling me is complete, bull. And yeah, at the end, kind of, because she was going out with somebody and, I asked something, she said she had nothing else to say about this album or its influences or something like that. And then literally she walked out the interview, got a cab to Radio 1, announced her engagement to this guy.
No.
But I wrote up the interview as it was. And actually, when you have people who are lying or are rude, if you just write that up, actually, that can be quite interesting. Because I think, you don't want to sugarcoat what's going on, really.
No,
absolutely. There are occasions where I might be interviewing a musician. I said this recently somewhere, kind of female musicians often, especially if they're going through a hard time, the story can often be that this woman is going through a hard time rather than this woman's made an amazing record and she's also going through a hard time. So I've done, in those situations, I've left out the personal stuff as much. But if, there have been occasions when people have been total, dicks, and I have put that in. Yes.
I think it makes for a great read.
Yeah, exactly. Just let them, if it's been said, it's on your tape, and you're not, you let the quotes speak for themselves, really.
Quite.
Are there any people that you really want to interview that you haven't yet on your sort of bucket list? I really like interviewing the kind of people that have been around a long time, and female journalists aren't asked to interview as much. There's lots of old blokes who are always who are given old blokes to interview them generally. I was really lucky really early on in my career at Word Magazine because I was sent out to interview people like Robert Plant. It was amazing. They were like, we'd much rather a 27-year-old girl go out and interview him than a bloke who's known him since the days of Led Zeppelin or whatever. That was amazing. That doesn't happen very often. Yeah. I get sent off to do... I write mainly for The Observer, who would send me off to interview these kind of people, I hasten to add. But quite often I get sent to
this is my kind of clang dropping this now, like Marianne Faithfull and Chrissy Hind in recent years, people like that who are just like, amazing. But I don't get asked as much to interview, you know, this is a bit of a leap, but not from them, but, you know, I can't imagine being asked to interview Bruce Springsteen. You know, that being a leap because he lives in America. Or, you know, Willie Nelson had a record out last year and I was like trying to get an interview with Willie Nelson. You know, I'd love to interview people like that who've got amazing stories. And, you know, the people on my bucket list when I was a teenager, you know, I'm lucky I've interviewed a lot of them now, which is really great. You know, Michael Stipe was my dream. He, Jarvis Cocker. I've worked with him quite a few. I've worked with him once. I wrote a script for him for the ABBA exhibition in the South Bank, which was nuts. I was writing all these slightly saucy jokes for Jarvis, which he'd take out. I was like, oh my God, it's so embarrassing. But I've done a few phone interviews with him. I've got his landline phone number on my phone now. He's not my friend, but I'm like, I've got Jarvis's landline. Very exciting.
Yeah.
I should delete it, really.
Have you got Kylie's on you? Got Kylie's on your phone?
Kylie is beyond the realms, man. She is. But Kylie, you know, there's people I was, I would love to interview Adam Ant, actually, because he was my first love, and I have met him at an after show for a Tony Bennett concert, completely randomly. But he's such an interesting character, and he's had a tough old life, and also had lots of, you know, problems, personal problems, mental health problems. You know, but I've read some amazing interviews with him. But there's going to be others. I really enjoy interviewing people that aren't necessarily my great heroes. But you've got to really kind of do your prep, and, you know, jobs like the Chrissy Hind was great because I've always liked her stuff, but didn't know loads about her beyond her biography, so I had to really do the research, and I love that. You know, Marianne Faithfull, that was amazing. Yeah. But, you know, but some of the people, you know, like Madonna, if I was ever asked, which I wouldn't be, I don't think I'd want to interview Madonna. I don't think I'd want to interview somebody, or, you know, Morrissey I don't want to interview for obvious reasons.
No. Yeah, right. So you've got a death wish, go on. I'd
like to interview maybe Bernard Sumner from New Order. I'd like to interview again. I did him once for about another project years ago. But yeah, there's people I love who I've done little interviews with. I'd love to do longer interviews with, actually.
Yeah.
So you were talking about first love, sir, just back there, and I can't not ask you about the Pet Shop Boys, because Neil Tennant was one of the first people that I loved. him and Andy Peters, and I don't know, I just feel like things didn't work out so well for me.
Well, my first loves were, there was Adam Ant when I was really little, because I just thought he was a Prince Charming out of a book. Neil Tennant, Michael Stipe Morrissey, all gay men. There we go. Yeah.
But, I'm right with you there. Right with you. But but you, the Pet Shop Boys, Neil Tennant, they're friends of yours, are they not?
No, they're not friends. Well, no,
Oliver Shepherd, our mutual friend, told me a lie.
I wish they were. I have interviewed them quite a few times now. I did an interview with Neil Tennant, Chris Lowe, together for the New Statesman, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and that was amazing. I did an interview with Neil by himself, a big profile interview. Maybe that was around the same time. I've done a lot of phone interviews with Neil as part of bigger pieces. He did this really fantastic playlist for that lockdown playlist piece I mentioned earlier. About it, for nature lovers. It's great. It's got loads of classical. It's got a bit of folk. It's got it's really lovely. He's very, very thoughtful. Although he was he did write. He was the only person who insisted that he wanted to write it himself. He's been a little bit prickly with me since I reviewed his book in the New Statesman and said that I didn't think he was fantastic. It's a funny thing with that has been a funny thing with the Pet Shop Boys, because again, one of my big early loves, and those early records. And I play out. My son is 6 now, and I've made him obsessed with the Pet Shop Boys.
So great! They're brilliant.
I saw them live in September with my younger brother in Hyde Park. They were so fantastic. They're such a brilliant band. But yeah, you know, when I've still, a couple of albums I've given mediocre reviews to, lukewarm reviews. Neil Tennant did his lyrics book for Faber, which was, a book of lyrics. His lyrics don't work on the page as well as some people's, and it's just one of those things. And I felt like maybe a little bit more stuff around that would have helped the book in a way. But yeah, this is my theory. I think Neil doesn't want to be friends with me anymore. Because I did used to get
broken for you.
I did used to get Christmas cards from them though. For about 5 years, right. I got a Pet Shop Boys Christmas card, and then I dropped off the list. And
okay, so Oliver Shepherd. Sorry, I'm just going to say I'm sorry. I take it back. That was what I was told, and I reinterpreted it as they are your friends.
I think they were my friends when Oliver used to come around the house and see my. I'd be like, Oliver, look at this card. But yeah, I haven't got Neil Tennant's phone number, and but he knows I love him. It is funny. He'll call when I spoke to him about 6 months ago for another piece with lots of different interviewees, and he was like, "How's it going, Jude? How's Wales? How old's your little boy now?" And I was thinking, this is so weird. He knows about my life, but that's. Yeah. But the lovely thing they are human beings. That's the thing I try and get across in my writing. Actually, when I'm doing interviews, these. However talented or eccentric or peculiar they are human beings, and you are two human beings in a room having a conversation with each other.
Yeah, quite.
At the end of the
day. Or three.
Yeah.
All three. All three.
What do you do if you've only got 20 minutes with someone? Do you just write as many lines of inquiry down as you can, just so you don't sort of run out of things to say? I'm just saying, as a beginner interviewee, we've only been going for a couple of months.
Oh, you're doing amazing. You're doing amazingly. Really good.
Totally trying to get tips. We're trying.
Thank you.
20 minutes. What I do is, I say do loads of prep. So the Michael Stipe 20 minutes. I knew lots of that stuff already, but I thought, okay, think about what they're expecting, and you sort of need to flatter them a bit, but not too much. I always try and drop in something really early on. This is a good tip. I don't know if it always works. I try and mention something quite early on that shows I know their stuff. Just you said in this interview, blah blah blah, this, and I thought that was really interesting, and so you just don't trot out, tell me about your new album, or who your influences or whatever. The Jules Holland School of Interviewing on the later. But sorry, Jules, sorry. But I always think doing that is good, because especially if you've got a short space of time, then that happens. With the Michael Stipe, I was helped hugely by an old colleague of mine who suggested that I use a kind of funny format to make it more interesting. Because it was the last day that REM were doing interviews before they'd announced they'd split up, and this was their last day of interviews ever. Wow. So I just got in there, which was good.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. And my old colleague Andrew Harrison, who used to be editor of Select magazine in the 90s, and I'd worked with A Word, and now does the brilliant Romaniacs and Bunker podcasts. He's brilliant. Yeah. He said to me, well, he's leaving his job, so why don't you give him an exit interview? So tell me the best things about your job. Is anything you'd have changed about your colleagues? Blah blah. And I got this clip, so I went to this interview and said, "You're right. I know we've got 20 minutes. Rather than ask you what everybody else is asking you, I'm going to do this because I thought it'd be quite fun. It'd be a nice way to frame the conversation." And he loved it. He really liked it. It was different because he's so bored of being asked to say, "Are you really going to split up forever?" He's going to be asked the same questions. And there were a few things. Early on, I asked him one of the questions, and I said, have there ever been any times when you haven't liked your work surroundings, or something like that? It was a better phrased question. And he started to say something, and I said, like in 1985 when you were in Wood Green in North London, making your third album, and I know you didn't like that, and I know Joe Boyd, the producer, was doing this with you, and so you could see him going, "Oh, yeah, okay, so she knows her stuff."
Yeah.
And that kind of, because you think of it from their position. I think they're in a room doing loads of these. He's been doing these since 1982 or whenever they first got to a position where they were doing that kind of interviews. you've got to mix it up. You've got to make it a bit more interesting. And and it was great in the end. But yeah, do your prep or find something interesting. I subscribe to a brilliant thing called Rock's Back Pages, which has lots of old interviews from across, music journalism history. And I always try and find some interesting old things from interviews to try and get different angles. Also, it doesn't work as much now, but I used to, like, if a band was from, say a band is Canadian. I did an interview with the Arcade Fire quite early on, and I found some of their really early Canadian press before they started to sculpt their, enigmatic, ideas themselves. And so I'd find some really interesting early stuff. But it's research, really, just finding something that's a little bit offbeat or strange. And I always love doing that. I did a massive retrospective on Kraftwerk years ago when they were playing the Tate Modern, and I remember thinking, right, I'm going to go to the British Library. I'm going to find when they were first mentioned in the press, and I basically I got all, because you can get all the old music magazines. They're all in these big binders. I sit next to a guy researching Socrates, and I'm there with a Melody Maker from 1974. And I found the first advert and how it looked, for Autobahn, and how different it looked and all this kind of stuff. And it's you've got to think around. I know it's not an interviewing tip, but to try and think of a different way around it. And often a point of connection can help as well. Mentioning the Welshness to Kylie. I have these off pat because I was a journalism lecturer for years, so I told some of the students this. I interviewed Justin Timberlake on my honeymoon because I was
God.
Wow.
I was offered this job. We like to fly to New York, so could have. This is when they still haven't. For Women's Mag, there's a Justin Timberlake interview in New York. It's next week. Are you back from honeymoon? No, but I'll be in honeymoon in New York, so I had to leave my husband of 2 weeks behind to interview him. But we'd just been to Memphis, Tennessee. There'd been floods there. I knew that Justin Timberlake's family were from there, so I just said, we've just been down here, and kind of like, and are your friends and family all right down in Memphis? And that was the way we started off, and then we started talking about his influences from when he was a kid, and he quite liked the fact that I was a music journalist interviewing him and not a typical women's magazine journalist or whatever that is, but he obviously got twisted a little bit with that. So it's just using what you've got in different ways.
Yeah.
And being nice. Don't be a dick.
Was he nice? Well,
no,
we are a
really.
bit of dicks, really. But, he wasn't. He was.
No, he was. He was like, I'm Justin Timberlake. He was kind of, he just seemed quite stoned throughout the whole thing. He might have been. I don't know. But he was, the bit at the beginning, he was really interested with the Memphis stuff. But women's magazine interviews are tough ones because, they have changed, but they used to be, we want to know about his romantic life. We want to know about, that kind of stuff. And people don't want to talk about that stuff. They want to talk about their projects. I get that. And I always found that really hard to do. But he was all right. But he was obviously like, hey girl, you're here with Justin Timberlake. You must think this. And I'm like, oh no, my husband's outside actually. He was like, what?
Yeah.
He was a bit thrown that I would rather be, hanging out with my new husband than him.
Yeah. What was Dan doing in the meantime?
Just like lurking outside the Four Seasons Hotel, kind of. He had security guards come up to me, what are you doing? He's like, my wife's there to Justin Timberlake. And they're like, yeah, right. No, I think he was just wandering around having a nice time. But I did run a bit late. Poor Dan. I know. Yeah, that was also the same year I interviewed Michael Stipe, and at the end of that year, this is I always parrot this anecdote out, but it makes me laugh. I was at Christmas drinks, and Dan was with me and my husband and some friends, and obviously other journalists. And he said, "Oh, what's the best thing that's happened to you this year?" I haven't seen you for ages. What's the best thing? And I said, I interviewed Michael Stipe 2 months ago. And Dan just nudges me and goes, we got married in April.
Before we let you go, we've got this Spotify playlist, right? And
Cool.
It's an eclectic old mix of things that we've asked everyone we've spoken to so far, if they could recommend anything new they're listening to, or not even anything new, something you just love to listen to share.
I would definitely say the new, Held Down with the new Laura Marling album, which I've been playing continually for 2 months, although that's been all over the radio too, so that's not a massively new one. I listen to lots of sort of ambient music and stuff like that. I was recommending one of my favourite ever albums to somebody else today, which is an album called The Golden Morning Breaks by Colleen, who is a French musician. She's called Cecile Scott, but records under Colleen. This was her second album, I think. She plays lots of old instruments, like the viol da gamba, and layers up this on music boxes. She's brilliant. I was just, so great. One of the tracks I walked down the aisle to on my wedding day.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so there's two. And also the new Nadine Shah record is great, and I don't want it to get lost in lockdown craziness, but it's a really fun post-punky but sort of pop record with loads of horns. It's all about women getting older and kind of the way people's opinions change of you, and kind of it doesn't give a shit, and it's brilliant, and I love it, and I really hope it gets everywhere because it's fantastic. But there's been 2 or 3 singles off that already, which you can find on Spotify.
All right, yeah.
There she is. There's Jude.
There she goes.
So many good stories. I love it. It was ideal. I mean, I love a gossip. So this was just like, I felt like I had to really restrain myself from asking, please tell me more. I want more.
Yeah. I know. There was a bit where you kind of go, please do tell, when you were talking about people that she hadn't had good interviews with. And
yes.
I could hear her sort of going, shall I? Okay, yeah, I'll just say it. It was really good.
Yeah, she was great. She wasn't backwards in coming forward about these things. I was very impressed.
Not at all.
Great.
No. Yeah. So thank you very much to Jude for giving up your time to us, if you're listening. But yeah, thanks very much. And thanks to everyone listening. And that was great. We're going to have more guests again, because that's what we do every week. We have a different guest each week. Yeah,
we're going to have more yet again.
Yeah.
It's good. It seems to be working, so we should definitely stick with it.
Yeah, we'll stick with it. Yeah. Well, maybe we could just chat about our week a little bit, Verity, just to have a catch up.
I mean, that would be lovely. Has it been good for you?
Yeah. You know what? It actually, so last week, do you remember we were talking about this house thing?
Yes.
Put an offer in on a house. Well, we got the offer accepted.
Yes, that is a fantastic news.
That is so good.
Hooray.
That is really good, yeah.
Oh,
so that
congrats.
was really exciting.
So
aside from, go on.
Does that mean now you are in the business of like paperwork hell, or no?
Yeah, well, we had a mad morning the other day where we did everything, all the paperwork, and we just, because we want to be really on top of it, because last time we did it, I don't know, there's so many links, isn't there? So you don't want to be that one that's slowing it down. So we got on top of that. But it was strange though, after we got that offer accepted, which is obviously brilliant news, I just don't know, I sort of felt I had a tough couple of days just getting anything done, feeling motivated, and I don't know, I had a few sort of projects I had to get done, and I was just putting them off. And it was just kind of, I don't know, and it took me until Thursday to be like, right, let's get everything done, start working. And then I had like 2 or 3 really good days. And
well done.
Turned my week around. Yeah. But it was just weird. It's the worst. I mean, I know people find it like have good days and bad days over this whole thing, but it was sort of a bit weird. And
because you sort of build and build and build to all these things, though. It's no surprise, like there's so much going on for you with a baby on the way and a new house.
I know.
And you build up, and then all of a sudden something major happens. It's like you just go woof, and everything kind of
that's what
need
I think,
a rest.
Because we had we thought the offer would be confirmed on Monday. It didn't get confirmed till Tuesday. So Monday was literally, I was just checking my emails every 5 minutes.
Oh, no.
So I think that was really bad for my brain, because I was just full of nervous energy.
Sounds like my relationship with Twitter. very bad for the
Oh,
brain.
yeah.
I've
You've
come
really
off it a
embraced
bit.
Twitter, haven't you? Oh, you've come off it, have you?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, no, I am on it, but I did embrace it wholeheartedly. And I realised that a disproportionate amount of my day was spent scrolling through Twitter and getting angry with people. So I thought it's time to step away from that. So yeah, I've tried to limit myself to only a couple of times. Like one angry tweet a day is fine.
Well, Katie Hopkins has left Twitter now, so that's a nice thing.
Isn't
it's a
it?
bit of a nicer place.
Yeah.
Maybe we should get her on the podcast. Does she play any musical instruments?
I bet she'd be just lovely. I always get that feeling that she's a very warm human being, don't you?
It's just the character she plays isn't a very nice one, but she's lovely actually in real life.
Yeah, exactly. She's just a fantastic recorder player as well, I gather. So, you know.
It's like Bill Cooper, the trumpet player.
Yeah.
He was telling me that he's spent several like lunches with Piers Morgan. And apparently he's really lovely.
Well, there we go. Well, Piers Morgan, the Renaissance man of Twitter, he is somebody who's been like, you know, it's quite awful. And you go, yes, Piers, I do agree with that. That's upsetting.
Agree with you.
Yeah. Oh, what's wrong? Yeah. Hey, I tell you something exciting though. Well, I think it is.
Yeah.
We have booked to go to a drive-through cinema in Nebworth to go and see Back to the Future.
Oh, wow.
I'm so excited. It's
Brilliant.
like the closest thing to real life that I will have done in ages. And wow.
Oh, wow. That's going to be cool.
Can't wait.
Nebworth and Back to the Future. That's a brilliant combination.
Honestly, so many good elements to this. And, you know, as the boys are really chuffed about the fact that food is going to be brought to the car for us. Great.
Yeah.
Love that as well.
Oh, wow. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Where is Nebworth?
Well, I thought it was miles
sort of
away.
home counties or something?
It's about an hour away from here. So north, an hour north from where we are. So
okay.
is it,
Yeah.
I want to say Hartford way, but that's probably wrong.
Right. How does it work then? Are they, because in the old days, in the 50s, didn't they used to send it on the like FM radio? Or
that's a good
AM
point.
radio or something. So it come through the car radio speakers.
Yeah, there's some speakers thing.
Now?
Just not quite sure. But they definitely, they bring, they're big speakers parked up? I'm not quite sure.
Maybe they're just doing that. Massive
yeah,
PA.
maybe. Yeah. I can't wait.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I love that film. It's such a perfect film.
Me too. And I haven't seen it for years. So it's going to be great.
Excellent.
Hurrah.
What else have you been up to this week then, Verity?
Oh, what have I been doing? I've done a bit of practice actually. I'm really pleased to say. I did something. I had to do some before we played Prokofiev the other day, that was for sure. Well, I did like an hour beforehand.
Yeah.
It probably
That's
made
good.
a few differences.
If you were listening last week, we were bigging up Schuss 5 as the one we were going to do. And then it got to the last minute and then we literally cannot get the music for Shostakovich 5. Because it's still in copyright.
What a shame.
No other avenues came forward of methods of getting it. So we went for the second place, which was Prokofiev 5.
Yeah.
And that was really good. And it was quite fun, actually.
Didn't know it at all.
I didn't know it at all.
No, I didn't. No. It's great though, isn't it?
I've done in an audition, but it was really fun just turning the page and literally not having a clue what was going to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
And just, it's quite funny because that's something you do have to do that obviously sometimes. When you're playing,
I thought it was an excellent
since.
mental workout, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a bit at the end, the trumpet part at the end is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's not, but if you know it's coming, then you know what to do. But I was playing it for the first time and you're like, oh, right, I've got to do that now. I've got to do like sudden 3-octave leaps. 2-octave leaps. It was mad. And so I actually went, as soon as we finished, I went back and tried to play it again. I was like,
Did you?
I've got to play this.
I got to get it
I
right
need to be able to play this right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really fun, that.
Oh, it really was.
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely.
Some really good stuff in there.
It's so good.
I'm going to check out some
Prokofiev.
more of his symphonies.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, but aside from that, I've been a little bit of socialising, which has been nice.
Oh, yeah, nice.
This and that. I've been down at the in-laws this afternoon, which was great. I tell you what, my mother-in-law, she can knock up a great spread at the last minute. Ooh, delicious. Yeah. So yeah, that was nice.
What are we talking? Sandwiches?
All kinds of things, like many different breads, many different meats. Oh,
Yeah.
a delicious beetroot dip.
Oh, right. Nice.
I know. Such a joy. Have you been out socialising more yet, or are you still a little?
Not really.
Yeah.
No, we're just we're still basically lockdowning, sort of
Yeah.
isolating. We just don't want to get ill at all.
No,
now,
quite right.
'cause
I mean, I
that'd
have
be
to say,
rubbish.
I'll put in a disclaimer. It was at a good distance that I've been socialising. Definitely 2 meters
sure.
plus, but yeah.
Of course,
but
yeah.
I totally understand. You wouldn't want to get ill now, not with the baby round the
now.
corner.
We've been doing NCT on Zoom, so we've
Oh,
been
yeah.
making new friends.
Oh,
But that was
Brilliant.
That was good.
hooray.
And yeah. Oh, we Charlotte had a sort of surprise baby shower today
Oh,
that
did
some of her
she?
school friends threw for her. So that was really lovely. And a guy came around called Adrian Garrett. Do you know him?
Yes, what, the violinist?
Yeah.
No way.
He turned up and played some violin in our back garden.
Oh my God, that is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was really lovely.
he's great.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah. I hadn't met him before. And Charlotte's friend from school had booked it. So then he turned up and I was like, "Oh, Adrian." He's like, "Yeah, I'm Seb. I would play the trumpet, but I don't think we've met. But I haven't booked you." It was really strange, but but then he was going to do it on the front door. So he does like doorstep violin, and he goes around hospitals as well, and all that kind of thing. But he's been going around during the lockdown playing to people for birthdays and whatever.
Do you think he'd like to come and chat to us? Maybe.
Maybe.
Let's ask him. We'll ask him.
Okay.
Yeah. There we go.
We'll talk to him. He was a lovely guy.
Well,
he
lovely.
Came and he played some ABBA. He played a bit of Elton John.
Oh.
And then I said, "Do you know any Mendelssohn violin concerto?" And he did that.
Oh my God.
It's really good.
I really thought, oh no, musicians, I can't believe it.
I know. We really put him through his paces.
Yeah, exactly. Did you
it's
sit
great he
down
just turned up
like
on
a
his-
panel?
Yeah, that's right. We gave him some sight reading and
Yeah. And your next excerpt?
and then he went off on his bike and he was away.
Oh,
So,
good old Adrian Garrett. That's brilliant.
yeah, it was lovely. And it was great for Charlotte. She got some presents and
Oh,
it was nice, yeah. So we need to we're going to sort out the baby room today and make it all nice. And then we're pretty much ready with about 4 weeks to go.
woohoo. That is great.
That's it.
Yeah. Hooray.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I shan't keep you any longer then. I shall let you go back to your decorating and
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, great. Well, thank you for listening, guys, all the way to the end. And or maybe you've just fallen asleep, and in which case, wake up. Huh? I don't know if people do listen to this falling asleep, but I imagine it's quite a good method.
yeah, very soothing, surely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. I would recommend this time of the year going down to a lower tog duvet. It's going to get warm.
Yes. I think that is very wise words.
Yeah, wise word. It's midsummer now. It's the most daylight of the year.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah. We watched the solstice last night. Well, a bit of it from Stonehenge.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
they got it on. English Heritage had put it on. You could watch it.
Oh, nice.
The sunset. Yeah, it was nice. Robert put it on and turned the volume off, so it was a little bit like watching paint dry. But sorry, that probably makes me a complete heathen.
Oh, didn't Rob go and do something?
Yes, he did.
The day before, was it yesterday morning?
That's right. 4:00 in the morning, he went up to Wanstead. I think it was part of Wanstead Park. I can't remember. Wanstead Heath, I think they call it. And he played a part of a Bach partita on the Wanstead Flats. It was very lovely, and with the sun coming up in the background. Yeah, very beautiful. It's online if you fancy
lovely.
taking a look on his Stilo page. Yeah, it's very beautiful.
Cool. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, look, I'm going to let everyone go now.
Yeah, shall we?
And you.
Thanks, and you. Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. So have a great week, everyone. And see you next Monday for another episode of 3 in a Bar.
Bye.
Okay, then. So bye.